Sorry about that. Good evening. Good evening. I hereby call the Palm Springs regular City Council meeting of November 14th, 2024 to order. Okay. The next item is public testimony. This time has been set aside for members of the public to address the City Council on non-public hearing items only.
My name is Wilma Session Glover, and I'm here on behalf of Section 14. I just wanted to give a little history of my family history on Section 14. My family came to Palm Springs Indian Reservation in 1947. At that time, there was no utilities. My grandfather, Calvin Lacey Sr., went to the gas company in the 1950s, early 1950s, to state that there was no utilities there. And the gas company bargained with him that if he would dig the holes so the utilities could be put in, that they would put in the gas lines. So therefore, Lacey Road was developed on the Section 14 in Palm Springs. It was a lot. My parents and grandparents went through a lot being on Section 14. We also were able to work for the rich. My grandmother worked for Lucille Ball. My aunt worked for Lucille Ball. My grandfather and my uncles worked for Perry Sanders Roofing for many years. Every holiday season, we as kids, I was young then, got to go to Lucille Ball's, Kay Ballard's, and they would make us the gingerbread houses for Christmas. But I just want to say, I support this bill, and I want to make sure that not only all people, that people just in Section 14 group get compensated, but there's some of us that were in the group that also have a history of Section 14. So I would like to make sure that everybody gets compensated for their woes that they had to go through, my parents, my grandparents, from living on Section 14. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Vicki Brown Walton, followed by Ben Mayfield, and then Gloria Gonzalez.
Hello, good evening, council members. Lisa Milliton, I spoke to you regarding your transformation. I truly hope that the council member really take it under consideration to do the right thing, and let's get closure so you won't procrastinate and we won't agitate. Also, we want you to have and can reconsider of a Remembrance Day of all of the descendants as well as the survivors from all cultural barriers. You can't undo what took place from your ancestors, but we can go forward. We can't go backwards, and we just ask that you really consider and let's bring closure from the hurt, because basically whatever is going on with us to come to some type of agreement, it's just a Band-Aid, but we're willing to take that and go forward, to take that and make some good come out of a Remembrance Day for our descendants as well as the survivors. And I want to thank all of you for being patient, caring, and understanding. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ben Mayfield, followed by Gloria Gonzalez, and then Doug Evans.
Hi, good evening, Council. My name is Ben Mayfield, Section 14 survivor. Before I get started, I'd like you to set aside a day for the Section 14 survivors and what we've gone through. So if you can put that on your yearly calendar, we'll definitely appreciate it. Okay, here we go, Section 14. This journey has been difficult, long, and painful. And during this time, as a child growing up, Palm Springs is my home. Palm Springs is, I sold papers up and down the streets every single day, except Sunday. So what I want to say today is that not only has it been long and difficult, we have lost survivors and descendants along the way. This journey has been difficult for my family. It's been difficult for the community. I want to put this to the friends of Frank Bogart. You're probably here in this hall today, but you failed Frank Bogart. If you're truly a friend of Frank Bogart, you failed him because you're not a true friend. You did not harness his immoralities. And Frank committed some pretty bad things as far as what he had done to the Section 14 survivors. The culture and community of Section 14 was denied his equal protection under the law. However, Frank Bogart looked at these people as not citizens because they were not the same as him. They did not have his European entitlement. European entitlement that feel justification for all that it does, however, has no accountability or fault. And friends of Frank Bogart, you are also complicit in this action because you failed miserably as a true friend. You failed to harness, to reel in the immoralities of Frank Bogart and yourself. Last but not least, to the members of the City Council, I want you to ask yourselves these two questions. In the ensuing settlement action, did you properly,
Mayfield, your time
without
is up.
prejudice, and let me reiterate, without prejudice, execute a fair, moral, and decent decision?
Here.
And did we truly consider the irreparable harm that has been placed on survivors of and descendants of Section 14?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. We are going to have to limit to 2 minutes. Next speaker is Gloria Gonzalez, followed by Doug Evans, followed by Christina Gennaro Martinez.
Good evening, Council and Mayor and staff. You have to excuse me, I'm kind of nervous. Where do I begin? I would like to thank you for your commitment in helping us with this. I know you worked hard also and had many critics, but you did not ignore us like your predecessors, and I want to thank you for that. Earlier, there was a speaker that said it wasn't a crime. It was a crime against humanity. And my God says, treat your neighbor as you would treat yourself. And my favorite president said, this is not a country of blue or red. It is the United States of America. 2 important words. United means all of us. No matter what religion, what color, what race, anything. United means together. And at these times, we must work together. The other important word, America. We are all Americans. Yes, we are. And I would like to just say one thing that maybe not all read from the ARG document. Says, should by no means be considered a complete accounting of the history, nor should they be considered a direct reflection or replacement for the voices and the stories of those who personally were affected by the displacement from Section 14. And I would also like to honor the veterans. I'm sure there's many here that were in Section 14 and moved out. I'd like to honor them. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Doug Evans, followed by Christina Gennaro Martinez, followed by Sharon Hendricks. Mr. Evans? Is he here? Oh, sorry.
Good evening, members of the City Council. My remarks are going to be very brief. I just asked the city clerk to hand out a letter from Carrie Allen that she asked me to hand out to you. Frank worked very hard, and I know he's controversial. He worked tirelessly, and we think the record is starting to show some of that effort. Friends of Frank Bogart is not here to have an argument with Section 14 survivors. Frank was supporting remedial programs when he was mayor, when he was after mayor. He had a split council. 3 members over here, he had 7 council members. 3 over here, 3 over here, and he was in the middle, and he tried to do the best he could in the times that we had. That's our only comments. This is the Survivors' Night. We welcome them. I've had some great conversations tonight, and we look forward to working with everybody in the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Christina Gennaro Martinez, followed by Sharon Hendricks, and then Ted Barajas. Christina? Oh, there she is.
Okay, so I just want to say thank you for hearing all of our stories. All right, hold on. Okay, so I want to thank you all for hearing all of our stories. I am a descendant. My mom, Margaret, is a survivor. She's 14, growing up with her parents and her siblings, and she continued to live there when she got married with my 2 older brothers. So it has been hard for everyone to come out and participate, especially our seniors. Like I said, my mom, and rest in peace, Inez, who she went to school with. And they were here fighting for justice. And so also all those that are handicapped, in walkers and wheelchairs, and they came out to fight for justice. So we, like someone else had said, we have had some survivors and some descendants pass away through all this. So if you could just please accept the settlement, and also consider a day of remembrance to celebrate Section 14's contributions to this city of Palm Springs. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Sharon Hendricks, followed by Ted Barajas, and then Chris North.
Good evening. My name is Sharon Hendricks, and I'm here on behalf of Section 14. First, I want to thank you guys for having this meeting after waiting so very long to get on the agenda to let it go this far. It's been decades, and I do appreciate you guys being here. I would also appreciate that you open your heart, your mind, and your soul to understand the struggle that we have been waiting for. Some of you won't be here on the council, so when you leave here, you can have peace of mind. But this is something my family on both sides have not been able to have since this tragedy. So I really hope when you go and you put your vote in, and it should be an easy vote because everything is there. And you did not include any of the descendants nor the survivors in the study. So I hope that you will also take into effect of everything that has been spoken, written, and many meetings. I'd like to thank the veterans, who was my grandfather. I'm a survivor, a descendant on both sides of my family. And my grandmother, grandmother was Choctaw Indian, so she was allowed to live there before they opened it to the public. We lost either way. So I ask that you consider this settlement. I ask that you not only consider it, but maybe go above it because it's deserved. We've been waiting patiently. If it was your money in the bank, it would gather great interest. Here you see a lot of people, and this is not even everyone here. There are people on the phone that can't be here. It's more than just the few that have been showing up. So please, please look at all of us. We come in many shades, many colors, but we have one united thing, a pain that the city has caused. And we ask that you make this as whole as you can when you vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ted Barajas, followed by Chris North, and then Cheryl Taylor.
Good evening, Council, and thank you for having this forum. My name is Ted Barajas, and I'm a survivor of Section 14. Our family moved here in 1925, and we lived in Section 14. That's where we moved. Our family moved there. We moved there until, of course, we were thrown out, evicted, asked to leave. We sacrificed a lot. Our family sacrificed a lot. Parents worked for the city, worked at the city, worked for various community members. I had an uncle and a stepfather who died in World War II. We're a Gold Star family. They're veterans as well. And if they knew what happened to us, I have no idea what they would say, but it wouldn't be really good. I encourage you, please, please consider, and as said earlier, go above the offer because there's a lot of us that are suffering. As a teenager, when I moved out, I kind of lost the time and what had happened. And it was about 8-9 years ago when I saw a display on Section 14 when I went to the museum. As I was reading it, I started crying. I was in so much rage. I had forgotten what we had gone through. And I will never forget that. Please do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Chris North, followed by Cheryl Taylor, and then, is there another Christopher North?
Is this the one? Greetings and good evening to everyone. My name is Christopher North, and I'm a full-time resident here of Palm Springs, and I live in the Gene Autry neighborhood. I've lived in Palm Springs for 21 years now. First of all, I want to thank you for asking for the historical study to be done. I read it. I thought it was very comprehensive in scope and detail, and I learned a lot from it. So thank you for commissioning that study. Today, I don't really have a comment, but I do have a question for the City Council and for Ms. Martin and the litigants. And that is, why is the tribe not cited in this lawsuit? And why wasn't the tribe included in any and all discussions about reparations? It is clear that the tribe and tribal members benefited as much or more from the abatements than the city did. The tribe also supported those abatements and asked for the city's help with those abatements. So it seems only fair to expect the tribe to pay in the burden of reparations. Why is this not occurring? Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Cheryl Taylor, followed by Samantha Nick Smith.
Good evening, City Council. My name is Cheryl Taylor. I'm a descendant of Section 14, and you heard my story. And I just would really want you to accept the proposal the council has put before you and have a day of remembrance for Section 14 so we won't be forgotten. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a second Christopher North here? I had two cards for Chris North and Christopher North. No? Okay. The next person is Samantha Nick Smith, followed by Lisa D. Bernard and Yvonne Hill.
Good evening, City Council. I'm just here just to be a voice for my grandfather, Noble Smith, who was on Section 14, migrated from Texas. He suffered a lot. He was a veteran. He fought for his country. He worked for Desert Hand Laundry in Palm Springs for many, many years. I'm just here to ask you to please to do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lisa D. Bernard and Yvonne Hill, followed by Hilton Smith. Lisa D. Bernard? Okay.
Hello, I'm Yvonne Hill. Oh, you here? I'm Yvonne Hill. This is my sister, Lisa Bernard. We're here to support Section 14.
We're descendants. Our father and our grandmother lived on the Section 14. We support it, so we thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Hilton Smith, followed by Diane Johnson, and then Betty Mayfield Taylor.
Good evening. Can you hear me okay? It's a pleasure to be here today. My name is Hilton Smith. I am the CEO of Black Lives Matter Imperial Valley, and I have been supporting Section 14 from the very beginning. And what I learned while I was supporting them is that they have the tenacity and they had the courage to speak up and to demand justice. And I was impressed that this whole campaign conducted themselves in a very civil and respectful manner while demanding justice. So as the CEO of Black Lives Matter Imperial Valley, I want to commend the people of Palm Springs for their courage, their stability, and I know that the people here are, what I've learned, are extremely beautiful people, and you should be proud to help people. And I would like to say that they deserve atonement, and the descendants of Section 14 deserve justice. I want to thank you and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Diane Johnson, followed by Betty Mayfield Taylor, and then Diane McAlpine.
Good evening. I would like to first thank Pearl and all the workers that put this together and all the panel that's here. I'm speaking on behalf of my mother and father. I spoke earlier on, and I said I'm a resident. I was born on Section 14. So my mother and father is not here to see this. They're looking down from heaven, but I'm just so thankful that it is a chance for the hard work that my father put in to buy the property and the home that we once lived in. Moved here from Texas to live a better life, and ended up losing everything that they moved here for. So I would like to just say thank you to the panel, and I'd like to say thank you to Pearl and all the workers. And that's it.
Thank you. The next speaker is Betty Mayfield Taylor, followed by Diane McAlpine.
Good evening, all. Usually I don't need a microphone. We're here again, hopefully last time, because this has been a long journey, right? Right? Yes. But it's been much longer for us. Yes. Much, much longer. Yes. Many of you weren't even here during the time, and you've heard the stories over and over many times. I was born here. I was raised here. I was educated well enough to go on and get a college education with master's degree, teaching, taught for 25 years. And every time I talk to someone, I proudly tell them, I'm from Palm Springs, California. And I think many of us are very proud to say that. So this is something that I hope we can put as a positive with that when we talk about Palm Springs. I love my city. I love it, I do. But I want you to do the right thing, accept the proposal. We have been fighting, and we have been trying to work with everyone and get this matter resolved. We have lost so many survivors and descendants. And you look, just this 1 month alone, we buried 5. Funeral tomorrow. 11. Funeral, 11? Yeah. That they're aging out, sicknesses are happening, but I would love for them to be able to see that our fight didn't stop and we were able to accomplish something. And someone mentioned Miss Inez Taylor, she was our soldier. And we have lost her, and I would have loved for her to have been here tonight to see what the outcome of this is. So make this decision with your heart. Realize this is Palm Springs. You got educators, you got lawyers, you got all types of individuals here. And everyone is proud to say that they are from Palm Springs. I'm very proud.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Diane McAlpine, followed by Pearl Devers, and then Ginny Pope.
Hundreds of tenants were evicted from Section 14, tragically, and many, many of their descendants are here tonight. There are also 45,000 taxpayers in Palm Springs. So let's talk about reparations, which was a concept initially intended to restore victims of crime, not victims of injustice, and it's important to distinguish the two. Discrimination has always been despicable, but not illegal until thankfully and finally society passed laws against it and empowered it to punish perpetrators. For example, women were prohibited from voting, from getting a credit card, from admission to universities, only because of gender. Imagine the forfeited generational wealth, unjust, but yet not yet a crime at the turn of the 20th century. American women might seek reparations and successfully bankrupt all universities, lenders, and all corporate and civil employers for unjust but legal discrimination. Other targets of discrimination included disabled people, gay people, Catholics, Jews, Muslims, all people of color, all foreigners, if you like. We've all suffered injustice. Should we all get reparations? But from whom? Do we victimize unsuspecting Palm Springs taxpayers, most of whom are transplants to begin with? Do we sentence them to injustice committed by strangers decades ago? It has never been fair to punish the children of wrongdoers. That's unjust and wrongheaded. No one will contest that people of color were barred access in Palm Springs and elsewhere at the turn of the 20th century. The calamitous eviction of tenants in Section 14 by tribal landlords was not very nice, but it was not against the law. The tribe simply decided that they liked the city's redevelopment ideas, higher revenues, a reliable income stream, and full city services. But they paid no mind to the painful consequences endured by their tenants. It wasn't very nice, but it was an economic choice, not racially motivated, and sadly, it was a choice that was legally theirs to make. The city of Palm Springs broke no law, and the tribes broke no law. In the
Thank you.
end,
Your
poor
time is up.
tenants of all races were evicted.
The next speaker is Pearl Davers. Sorry, your time is up. Followed by Ginny Fote, and then Lauren Wolfer.
Hello to the council. I'm here again. I want to thank you once again, as I've said on many occasions, for the hard work that you do for the citizens and residents of Palm Springs. I'm grateful for your work. I do stand here in honor of my father, Robert Taylor, and my mother, Eula Lee Taylor, and the hard work that they also did. And by the way, they were taxpayers as well. They worked in the city. I just had to add that in there. But thank you for hearing all of these voices. And this has been a long journey. And as Betty Mayfield just mentioned, it's been a longer journey for us. When I was reading the ARG report, I dropped a few more tears because of some of the missing elements that I didn't even realize that happened during the time that I lived in Section 14. And you know what? We could never, ever, I could never be paid the tears that I've shed to watch my father become an alcoholic because he could not get a loan to move our home. You could never repay me for that. But you know what? I do want to thank you for considering something to remember the pain and suffering that we experienced, Section 14. There are so many stories. You have not even heard them all. And I've cried many tears just listening to people tell me their stories. And I do want to also ask for that day of remembrance for Section 14. That would be a great day for all of us who remember, grew up together, to get together and remember the great life that we had there on Section 14. We do look forward to mending. We look forward to healing. We look forward to making this city truly a united city, a city where there is injustice for everybody. And again, I want to thank you to please consider the settlement that is before us. And I really want to be able to hopefully work together on behalf of Section 14 with the city to make this the greatest city on earth. Thank you so much.
Thank you. The next speaker is Ginny Fote, followed by Lauren Wolfer, and then Charles E. Metcalf Jr.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I am not speaking against the settlement. I'm up here because there are so many questions that are not answered. I'm trying to feel good about this settlement. And I don't feel good because I'm trying to understand what we're doing tonight. There is no lawsuit, just the threat of one. So consequently, we're not creating a class action decision, which would have solved, I think, so many problems had that been created. What happens when there is a person who is not part of the settlement? There's no staff report, so I don't understand what will happen if someone comes forward after this settlement and that are not part of this group. So I want to make sure that we have something in place for that. The second thing is I would love to see the fact, as I said, I want to feel good about it, so I want to see the fact that a majority of the settlement is not going for legal fees, that is actually benefiting the descendants of Section 14. And we don't know, and I've read everything that came out. We don't know how many people are included in the settlement. So there's no way of us even knowing if the descendants are going to get 10 cents or if they're going to get $10 or what it is. I want to feel good about that we've done something good, but I don't feel that because there are still too many questions. And I think especially with the fact that we don't know what will happen if someone else comes forward that's not part of this group. So thank you for doing this because you've gone through a lot with this. I wish you had had some public hearings on this because we've always had public hearings, so
Thank
this
you.
was not.
Thank you. The next speaker is Lauren Wolfer, followed by Charles E. Metcalf Jr., followed by Wesley Smiter.
Good evening, Mayor Bernstein and Council. I am here today to express my wholehearted support for the Section 14 settlement and commend this council for taking action to address such a long-standing injustice in our community. This significant investment in affordable housing, community well-being, along with direct support for the people impacted, represents a really meaningful step towards justice, healing, and equity in our community. I want to commend all of the hard work that has made this settlement possible. This outcome reflects incredible dedication and resilience by the Section 14 survivors, the commitment of this council, and also a lot of hard work from city staff. But I want to say this is about more than the destruction of private property, although that, of course, is a profound injustice. People lived in Section 14 because they had nowhere else to go. Our city grew and our city thrived because of the contributions of service workers, domestic workers, and others in essential yet underpaid roles that make a resort city possible. Yet most of those workers couldn't afford to live anywhere but Section 14, and for communities of color, racist policies in both private and public sectors effectively barred them from living anywhere else. The ARG Historical Context Study shows that despite public demand, clear need, and available federal funding, past city leaders repeatedly refused opportunities to build affordable housing for the workers forced to live in some substandard conditions on Section 14. By tearing down low-income housing without replacing it, the city left a legacy of harm and exclusion that still impacts us today. However, with this settlement, this council is finally committing to righting these wrongs, addressing the needs of all residents, and building a more equitable and just Palm Springs. Thank you.
The next speaker is Charles E. Metcalf Jr., followed by Wesley Smith, and then Dana Henry.
Good evening, City Council. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here. I'm here to speak on behalf of my parents. We already know what my name is. I'm the son of Charles and Jean Metcalf, both survivors of Section 14. My parents were positive, productive members of this city, as well as many others. My father served as a police officer for nearly 18 years on the Palm Springs Police Department, and my mother worked at Walker Scott from the day it opened to the day it closed down. And contrary to popular belief, my parents are property owners and they are taxpayers. My parents and many other family members lived on Section 14, and we all know the atrocities this city committed. For this is why we are here. You started this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. It ends with justice for all. Who do you consider to be a part of all? Is it all, or is it just a certain demographic of all? Leadership causes one to lead. You are in a leadership position, so lead and do the right thing. Imagine what the city of Palm Springs did. Imagine the survivors and descendants were yourselves. What would you want? What would make you whole? Consider what the families lost that cannot be regained. The survivors and the descendants want this city council to do the right thing and accept the proposal. Because the one thing the city and the city council would not do is wear us down. We will keep handing down the fight as long as we have to win.
Thank you. The next speaker is Wesley Smith, followed by Dana Henry, and then Meliza Kesey. Do we have Wesley Smith? No. Dana Henry? No. Okay. Meliza Kesey? Okay. Followed by, and then David Warner.
Hey, Council, thank you guys so much. My name is Makaija Kisi, and just look at all these people. Seriously, it's just beautiful. I'm here on behalf of Section 14, and I want to thank you guys for just attending this case at all. And thank you for the commitment of the Section 14 committee as well. You guys did an incredible job. Don't know how you did it, but you did a great job. So thank you. First off, I wanted to ask if you could please consider doing a Section 14 Day of Remembrance as an event and to recognize some of the contributions that we have done for this city and for the neighborhoods of this city as well. I personally have lived in Palm Springs for about 9 years. I just moved out of Palm Springs, but I really love this city. I'm always here. I'm seriously always here, like at least once or twice a week. It's just such an incredible place to be, and you know, the fact that my family had the opportunity to grow up here is great, but my grandfather and his siblings grew up in Section 14 for a short time. He's gone now. He passed away before we actually started this cohort, but he had a really tough life after that, and even though they had already built homes and things like that, like everyone had said before, they really had nowhere else to go. So for them to be displaced to the windiest part of the city was just absolutely insane to me, because y'all know how windy it gets out there. It's not even fun to drive. It's very, you know, the dust just piles up, and it can really take a toll on your mentality when you get to places like that. So I'm here to request that you guys do the right thing and, you know, do the thing that God will be proud of, and that's by going above and beyond what's even been proposed. So I thank you guys.
Thank you. The next speaker is David Weiner, followed by David Vignolo, followed by Shamoya Holland.
Hi again. I'm David Weiner. I'm a 20-year resident of Palm Springs, and so many speakers have gone before me that are far more eloquent, both people that are survivors and people that are not. But I want to kind of comment. I'm a numbers guy. I'm an accountant, so people have been talking about costs and can we afford it? And we've been hearing this argument for the entire negotiation process. So I'm going to go with what's been reported in the media, that we have a settlement offer of $5.9 million cash on the table to the group of survivors, right? Now, that's before attorney's fees, because the attorneys have put in, not just Ms. Martin, but many other attorneys have put in a lot of work, and they deserve to be paid for their efforts. That's kind of how this society works. So you take that $5.9 million before fees, that's about $16,800 per survivor. So probably you're talking less than $10,000 after attorney's fees and costs, right? Somebody said, I want to feel good about this settlement. I kind of think, why don't we ask the survivors, do they feel good about this settlement? Or are they okay with it? They're accepting it. And so I don't need to feel good. I want to know that they're either okay or they feel good about it. And I think if we get okay, that's pretty awesome. Unfortunately, but we take what we, you know, what we can, and especially in our political environment. You know, if another survivor comes forward or a descendant of these original 350, you know, I worked out the numbers, we'll come up with another $16,800 to settle that claim. This is a city budget, you know, of like $200-ish million. I think we can come up with 16,000 if that happens. So, you know, thank you. I thank you for all the work. I think the idea of a day of remembrance is awesome, and I hope that you do the right thing. And you've been great leaders so far. I know you're going to continue to do that.
Thank you. The next speaker is David Vignolo, followed by Shamoya Holland, and then Jane Dodd. David Vignolo? Yeah. Followed by Shamoya Holland.
This one? Okay. Good evening, Mayor Bernstein, Mayor Pro Tem DeHart, Council Members Garner, Holstage, and Middleton. I'm David Vignolo. I'm the current Vice Chair of the Human Rights Commission. I would like to commend you and the former residents of Section 14 for agreeing to the proposed settlement offer. I believe this settlement can help to heal our city and to better prepare for what will likely be incredibly challenging times ahead. I want to impress upon the Council the importance of establishing a rigorous process to ensure only verified former Section 14 residents and their descendants receive financial compensation. I also encourage you to direct the city manager and staff to ensure that as the city implements the terms of this proposed settlement, It clearly discloses how the updated financial processes and procedures discussed at your September 12 meeting will be employed. Specifically, what will be the payment process? Will there be regular reporting to the council as funds are released? Which city staff members will be assigned to oversee the settlement? Although the pain, hurt, and financial losses related to Section 14 can never be fully reversed, I hope we all can appreciate that this episode in our city history only reinforces the importance for all of us to speak out and elevate each other. We must ensure that whenever one group is disenfranchised or dehumanized for whatever reason, we collectively remain committed through our government, including its volunteer boards, committees, and commissions, to those principles embodied in the very first article of the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Shamoya Holland, followed by Jane Dodd, and then Letitia Skinner.
Thank you. Greetings, Council. My name is Shamoya Holland. I'm the daughter of Lawrence Holland, son of Mr. and Mrs. Hesse Holland of Section 14. I beseech you to take a positive step forward in your decision today. As justice for Section 14 has been a long time coming, and we are counting on you, our present elected leaders, to do what is fair for the survivors and descendants in this important relationship decision concerning the Section 14 Holocaust victims and the city of Palm Springs. I came to offer you another perspective this evening. I have newspaper clippings here from 1970 when the then mayor, Howard Weifels, came and answered the call of the tax-paying Section 14 survivors to finally get a park with a pool, sidewalks, school buses, city buses, street lights, and the trash men to service the Desert Highland Estates. Now, the Desert Highland Estates is a neighborhood in which many survivors found themselves trying to rebuild what they had lost during that Section 14 Holocaust. Allow me to reiterate the fact that this conversation happened in 1970, which was almost a decade after the Holocaust. Okay? So not only did the Holocaust occur, it took approximately a whopping 10 years for those survivors to get back to a sense of normalcy. In a nutshell, what Section 14 survivors endured because of the Holocaust goes well beyond the Holocaust itself, and I ask that you take all this in consideration when you make your final judgment. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Stephanie Brown, followed by Jane Dodd. Oh, I just did that. And Letitia Skinner.
Hi, my name is Stephanie Brown. I'm a descendant of Section 14 survivor, my mom and my grandparents, as well as my aunts, uncles, and cousins, and other family members. As a descendant of Section 14, I respectfully urge you and your colleagues in the Palm Springs City government to finally do the right thing by the Section 14 families that were displaced by accepting the counteroffer presented to the Palm Springs City Council by the Section 14 survivors and their descendants. The time to act and do the right thing is now. As a descendant and previous resident of the city of Palm Springs, whose family loved and contributes significantly to the economic success of the city of Palm Springs, as well as many other survivors and descendants, I urge you to please accept the counteroffer presented to the Palm Springs City Council in full by the Section 14 survivors and descendants. The city council members of the Palm Springs can make a difference, a positive change in the lives of the Section 14 survivors and their descendants by accepting this offer by the descendants and the survivors. By doing so, it will help heal some of the deep-rooted pain that the city of Palm Springs has caused the Section 14 survivors and descendants that were directly impacted by what the city did towards the survivors and towards survivors of Section 14, and how it affected the descendants as well through the residual effects of the city's unjust actions to displace the Section 14 families from their community, jobs, their cities, and location from their homes in Palm Springs, a place they love. Please act now and accept the counteroffer of the Section 14 survivors and descendants and their requests. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jane Dodd. And then Shamoya Holland, you have another one, so there's only one. And then Abraham Ishak.
Tonight, you're looking to vote on compensating people of color due to their forced displacement by the city, and I hope you do so. As Christy Holstead said in November 2022, those actions were wrong then, they are wrong now. They created devastation and trauma in our communities. Decades were spent denying and discounting wrongdoing, and even tonight. All evidence, news articles were quietly hidden from public view. People of color were directed, redlined, to live in the north end of town or in the Dream Home area, which at the time was behind the city dump, current home of Home Depot. The city was on the wrong side of history then, and no amount of heartfelt speeches, proclamations will ever erase the inherent racism that caused it. The city's doing the same thing again with this resolution of support for Israel as they forcibly displaced, destroyed, and committed genocide on an indigenous people on land the size of Palm Springs, Cathedral City, and Rancho Mirage, with 22 times the population. 44% of all deaths are children, and 70% of all deaths are women and children combined. All deaths have been fully funded with your federal tax dollars. We'll keep going. Palm Springs Unified has a student population of over 20,000 students. That is the minimum number of children that have been killed in Gaza. Most estimates are far higher, such as the Lancet Medical Journal's recent reports. Imagine, if you can, every student in the district being murdered either from bombing, starvation, lack of clean water, disease, or lack of basic medical care. This is what your resolution supported. We're not asking you to condemn Israel, just simply rescind the resolution and we can quit bothering you. Resolutions such as this and the deafening silence over the genocide are what keep Israel killing with impunity and erasing the history of its indigenous people. Just like Palm Springs did, but on a much smaller scale.
Thank you.
Do you wish to continue being on the wrong side of history?
The next speaker is I'm going to remind you, this is on the agenda item, so Abraham Ishak, and then I think Charles Metcalf.
Today, I urge you to approve the proposed settlement for the former residents of Section 14 and their families. This is a necessary and meaningful step to acknowledge the injustices endured by these families. The direct financial assistance, while modest, is a critical part of this settlement. For many of us, real estate holds generational value, like the home I may inherit. Losing that would undoubtedly be devastating. In addition to direct compensation, the housing initiatives, including the first-time homebuyer program, represents a strong investment in economic justice. As someone who benefited from a similar program in my hometown of San Jose, I know firsthand how impactful home ownership support can be in building stability for families. These programs, along with small businesses grants, show a commitment to restoring opportunities that were unjustly stripped away. Lastly, let us not forget the similar patterns of displacement and loss are tragically ongoing in places like Palestine. While families still face forced evictions and demolitions, Israel systematically erases communities, clears out neighborhoods, and replaces them with settlements. Homes are bulldozed, families are torn from their roots, and entire communities are ethnically cleansed to make way for expansion. It is a reality enforced and protected by the Israeli government, with their military arms stripping people of their homes and histories. By approving the settlement today, we can make a powerful statement. Palm Springs can choose to stand on the side of justice, rejecting displacement in all its forms and affirming that no one should be forced out of their home, whether in Section 14 or anywhere else in the world. Let's take this step toward healing our community and setting an example of integrity and accountability. Let's use this historic meeting to correct the wrongs of the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I've got a few cards here. I'm not sure if they're Charles E. Metcalf Jr. I think you spoke already? Yeah, okay. Wesley Smith and Dana.
Got more to say.
Wesley Smith and Dana Henry. No? Is there anybody else present? I have some cards here for non-agenda items. Is there anyone else present who wanted to speak on the agenda item? Because then we're going to go to Zoom. Mr. Crawford?
Good evening, council and staff, community. We got a lot of elders in the building, so I want to make sure that I acknowledge them. My name's Dieter Crawford. I live in the Desert Highland Gateway Estates neighborhood. I'm a descendant of Section 14. My family came to Palm Springs in the late 1940s and early 1950s, both sides, and settled on Section 14. Been advocating for Section 14 for about the last 6 years or so. My family and community have been doing it a lot longer than that. My grandmother, Cora Crawford, she's been quoted in many articles speaking about Section 14 from newspapers and magazines. Her quotes and photos were featured in the Agua Caliente Cultural Museum exhibit that went to the Smithsonian. So this is something that's very passionate for me. I just want to thank the council for looking at the settlement. Would like to see the cash portion be a little bit more, but it is what it is. As far as the housing goes, I'm not sure if we can really call that reparations because it's not directly for Section 14 survivors. I know that federal law prohibits that because it would be housing discrimination, but that's just how I feel personally. Would like to see programs for our nonprofit organizations the same way we included small businesses in the proposal. There were lots of religious, social, and cultural institutions on Section 14. There were churches such as First Baptist Church and New Bethel Church that were displaced and relocated to the Desert Highland neighborhood. There's photos of New Bethel Church being bulldozed that I saw in your own staff report. We also had the Mexican colony that was there that provided resources and services for the Mexican community. They also founded the Fiesta that was there. So just want to see some compensation for our nonprofits as well. And once again, thank you to the Section 14 survivors for fighting for social justice, and Councilmember Garner and Councilmember Holsted.
Thank you. Okay.
We have one more speaker, Francine Bradley. Francine Bradley.
Francine Bradley. And we'll go to Zoom.
Good evening, council members. My name is Francine Bradley. I'm a resident of Deepwell Ranch. For those of us of a certain age, excitement in our youth was putting on our best Western clothes from Rasmussen's, walking down Palm Canyon with our parents to the parade route, and waiting excitedly for our tall cowboy mare to ride by and wave at us. Everybody who was lucky, a resident or a tourist, had a Frank Bogart story. Mine came later in life when Frank told me proudly and with some colorful language about when he escorted the all-female tribal council to Washington, D.C. That visit resulted in the Indian Land Lease Act that finally gave the tribe economic authority over their lands. I found that when you asked Frank a question, you got a very straightforward answer. Might not have been the answer the questioner hoped for, but it was honest. I urge you, the members of the City Council, to honestly treat history about what Frank Bogart did for Palm Springs and do nothing further to tarnish the memory of truly a Palm Springs legend. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now go on to Zoom. First is Letitia Skinner.
Thank you for watching. Please go to etnmediagroupstore.com. That's etnmediagroupstore.com to get your latest merch. And as always, please like, share, and subscribe to your number one source for reparations and news.
Represents years of work and commitment from many, dating back long before my tenure here as the city manager. Our journey here has been filled with important discussions, reflections, and ultimately a shared commitment to address past wrongs and craft a package for former residents of Section 14 and invest more in our communities to provide more housing and economic development. This robust package is a strong commitment to the former residents of Section 14 and our entire community. In addition to all the tremendous work done by the survivors and descendants, I do want to take a moment just to recognize all the work and dedication of our city staff who traditionally don't get recognized very much in all the months and years that have gone into this. Staff from community development, economic development, who we're all going to be hearing from later on today, even folks from our purchasing department, city manager's office, finance, and it goes on and on. Just a lot of work. And special thanks to one of our consultants, Trevor Daly from Daly and Associates, who's provided a lot of guidance to us, and in addition to our city attorney, Jeff Ballinger, who you're going to be hearing from in just a few moments here. This settlement is a testament to all of their tireless work, working in conjunction with the survivors and descendants partners. And alongside every member of this city council to ensure a meaningful resolution, and we all want to recognize all the work and effort that council members have put into all of the work related to this. The City Council's proposed settlement includes a direct financial settlement of $5.91 million to be allocated to verified former residents of Section 14 and their descendants. Alongside this, the Council has committed to cultural and memorial initiatives, including the naming of a community park when new parks come online, support for a public monument to honor the legacy of Section 14 residents, and support of a community-driven healing center in the way of support letters and other forms of commitment the city can make. This is about ensuring that Palm Springs both remembers and learns from its history. This agreement marks a significant step forward. We're striving to make amends for past mistakes and to begin a path forward towards healing and for all of Palm Springs. Our city is a vibrant, inclusive community that has flourished due to acceptance and celebration of all people. While this agreement is an important milestone, we recognize that we still recognize the weight of today's decision. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness of each council member as you deliberate later on this evening. And with that, I want to now turn it over to our city attorney, Mr. Jeff Ballinger, for further comments on the legal settlement.
Thank you, City Manager Stiles. If I can, just a procedural matter, report out of closed session. The City Council did meet in closed session earlier tonight, or this afternoon, and there was no reportable action. So as Mr. Stiles indicated, Mayor and members of the council and members of the public here tonight, I'll go over briefly the settlement agreement portion of tonight's agenda, and then after that, city staff will be available to go over the housing and economic development aspects of tonight's agenda. Before I get into the details of the settlement agreement aspect, I wanted to just provide a little bit of background for context for everybody who's listening tonight. And this really only pertains to kind of the more recent history within the last few years. So as the council and the public will recall, on September 29th, the City Council adopted a resolution apologizing for the city's role in the Section 14 evictions. At that time, the City Council also directed the city staff to return to the City Council to discuss a possible reparations program. A few months later, in November, the City Council discussed some broad conceptual frameworks for a reparations program, focusing specifically on housing and how that could fit into a reparations program. Then the following year, in April of 2022, city staff met with representatives from the Desert Highland Gateway Estates, Section 14 survivors, the Black History Committee, and Where Is My Land, in order to follow up on the direction that was provided by City Council. Shortly thereafter, on April 14th, the city received a 9-point plan from attorneys Monroe Mobin and Barry Bennett, representing Section 14 former residents and their descendants. Then on May 4th, 2022, a claim was filed against the city by Mabin and Associates on behalf of Pearl Deavers and Section 14 survivors. Just so the public is aware, this is a claim that is filed usually against a public agency as kind of a prelude to a lawsuit. And the purpose of these claims is to provide the public agency with an opportunity to research and potentially settle claims. So as a member of the public earlier indicated, there has not in fact been a lawsuit, but there has been 2 claims, the second of which came in November 29th of 2022, and that was filed by Ms. Reva Martin on behalf of Pearl Deavers and the Section 14 survivors. Shortly after that, we met with Ms. Martin, and we began our discussions in earnest to try and resolve these claims that had been filed against the city. We held many meetings, both in person and by Zoom. Ms. Martin was kind enough to come out here to Palm Springs several times. We met her closer to her office as well, but we held many meetings over the last two years. Both parties, as you might imagine, presented their respective positions, including the city's position with regard to the statute of limitation. Given the statute of limitation, the city attorney's office advised the city that the obligations that the city has, if any, are largely moral obligations as opposed to legal obligations. So that's kind of the paradigm and framework that the city has been engaged in these discussions over the last couple of years. That said, even though they are moral obligations primarily, in my legal opinion, litigation inherently involves costs, time, and the risk of liability. With that in mind, the City Council has spent numerous hours considering these claims, and after careful consideration has reached these settlement proposals. In April of 2024, the City Council authorized a settlement of $4.3 million, directed staff to commission a historical context study, and directed staff to undertake various housing and economic development programs, which the city staff has been looking into and working diligently on over the last few months. That $4.3 million was based on figures that were available to the city at the time, based on the records that we had, and it was based on an assumption of approximately 145 non-abandoned residences that had been demolished by the city at an estimated value of $30,000 each. Following the release of the historical context study, which happened recently, that study shed more light on the history of Section 14, and the City Council took that into consideration as it considered these settlement negotiations. So with that, I will attempt to work this PowerPoint and go to the, yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt your presentation. Is there a packet or publicly available information for the public? I know staff had been working on that.
I believe the PowerPoint has been printed out and should be available to the public for any members of the public. Come up and I'm sure the city clerk's office will be able to provide that. Is it online?
It's online.
It's also online.
Thank you. Where can it be found online, please? Sorry to put you on the spot. You can provide the information later as well, but I know there are people who asked for it, so it'd be nice to have it so they can follow along.
The correspondence online under agenda correspondence. Agenda correspondence.
So under agenda correspondence on the city's website, you go to city council meetings and agenda correspondence, and it should be there. And then we're able to get physical packets as well for the public tonight here, right?
We'll provide some.
Thank you so much. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine. As City Manager Stiles indicated, the settlement agreement contains 2 components. One is the financial settlement, and as well as the other programmatic efforts that would be memorialized in the written settlement agreement. The financial settlement is $5.91 million, and we'll go into the details of how that was calculated and how it would be dispersed next, as well as the programmatic efforts that would be embodied in the settlement agreement, which involve park naming, a memorial, and support for a healing center, again, which we'll go into detail here in a second. So with regard to the first aspect of the settlement agreement, the financial settlement, it is valued at $5.91 million. The distribution method would be through a direct payment to the claimant's attorney trust account, which is how most lawsuits are settled, which is with a payment to the trust account, sometimes to the trust account and the client, a joint check. And these trust accounts are accounts that lawyers and law firms are frequently hold, and they are regulated by the state bar. So there is oversight, and the money cannot just be spent, at the whim of the attorney. There are strict regulations with regard to how those funds are to be spent. So the payment will be made to the claimant's attorney's trust account, who will then oversee the disbursement to verified former Section 14 residents and their descendants. The claimant's class is to provide 4 weeks worth of an opportunity for qualified persons to join a class of claimants. And there was a comment earlier today from a member of the public with regard to the fact that there is no class action lawsuit. That's true. Ms. Martin has not filed a class action lawsuit. There's been no class action lawsuit filed. However, the settlement agreement as proposed tonight and it has been presented to Ms. Martin is structured very similar to a class action lawsuit. And that's what this portion really deals with, which is providing an opportunity for other qualified persons to join the class of claimants, and the claimants will agree to the city's anti-discrimination clause. This will provide for protection against the city, against future liability, as well as the fourth bullet point here. The basis of the amount that was arrived at by the City Council is based on an estimated current value of $30,000 per home, with a total of 197 non-abandoned residences, which is the best available information that we have from the historical context study. The settlement agreement as proposed would contain standard settlement provisions, including no admission of wrongdoing or liability by either party, as well as the requirement that release and waivers be obtained from at least the 1,200 existing claimants, as well as any others who join in pursuant to that second bullet point here. And again, so that would go to the comment from the member of the public with regard to potential future liability. This would protect against individuals coming forward in a year or two and making similar allegations or claims against the city. And so with regard to the settlement agreement, the city staff and the city attorney's office would direct the city attorney to prepare a settlement agreement in form and substance as approved by the city attorney and city manager, and direct the city manager to execute all documents necessary to carry out this settlement. With regard to the number of homes, as I mentioned earlier, the April 2024 estimate was 145 homes. That was based on the abatement records that the city had at the time. As I also indicated, based on the historical context study and multiple data points within that study, the city estimates the number is closer to 197. It should be recognized that obviously the events that are the subject of this settlement occurred 60, 70 years ago. So there may be some who will say that there were higher numbers. There may be some that say there are lower numbers. But this is really the best estimate that we have based on the historical context study, which the city commissioned. So with regard to other programmatic efforts that would be included in the settlement agreement, the City Council has agreed to a Section 14 memorial monument, and this would honor and remember the former Section 14 residents and list their names, similar to what the Vietnam Memorial does in Washington, D.C. The monument location would be selected in consultation with community representatives who are interested in being part of that conversation. The other programmatic effort would be the naming of a park. As new parks come online, new developments are required to install parks, and so the City Council has committed to working with the Section 14 claimants to name a city park. And then finally, the City Council has indicated a willingness to provide support with regard to a cultural or racial healing center to establish a community-driven center focus on cultural and racial healing. This support would be limited to providing letters of support and limited staff assistance. The city is not proposing to provide land or significant financial resources. It's really lending limited city staff as well as the city's moral support for that type of a program. That concludes my presentation with regard to the settlement, the liability settlement portion of this night's agenda. I'm certainly available to answer any questions. I believe the mayor and the city council was proposing to have separate conversations and action. It's up to you if you want to take questions and discuss this portion first before then moving on to the housing and economic development portions.
Okay. Do we want to start with just questions or want questions and discussions?
I'd like to get questions in.
Okay.
And deal with this matter before going on.
Okay. Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you. Jeff, as you indicated, a claim has been filed, and that claim, as I understand it, provides an opportunity for us to reach a resolution.
It's hard for people to hear.
I'm sorry.
Maybe IT can turn it up.
Thank you. So, as you indicated, a claim has been filed, and that provides the city with an opportunity to reach a resolution.
City Clerk, can you ask IT if they can maybe turn it up?
Right. Thank you.
IT, can you turn up council members' mics, please?
I'm happy to, for some reason my mic is louder. I'm happy to repeat the question. The question was whether a claim has been filed, and the purpose of that is to seek a resolution. Yes, the California law provides for the requirement that a claim be filed before a lawsuit is filed against a public agency, and the very purpose of the claim is to engage in the type of settlement discussions that we've been engaged in over the last 2 years, to research facts, to kind of present legal arguments on both sides to avoid potentially having to file a lawsuit, which can be very costly.
So if we are unable to reach a resolution, is there any doubt in your mind that the plaintiffs will file a legal action?
Based on the conversations that we've had with opposing counsel, there's no doubt in my mind that they would.
So can you give us an estimate as to if we went into litigation, how many years and how much money on our side would be expended in that litigation?
I think that based on looking at other similar lawsuits that have been filed in other jurisdictions, as well as just my analysis of kind of the facts and the history of this, which go back many decades, I could see that litigation lasting 3, 5, maybe even 7 years, many years. It could take quite a long time, including appeals and potentially seeking review by the state Supreme Court. In terms of costs, it would cost probably $500,000 to $2 million, given all of the discovery and the time that would be involved in those multiple years of litigation.
Right. And it's your estimate that that litigation on behalf of the plaintiffs would fail, but can you guarantee that?
So given the current statutes of limitations that exist under state law and as well as federal court precedent, I believe that the city would stand a very good chance of prevailing, but there is never any guarantee in courts and in the process of litigation, no.
And if we were to fail, then we would not only have the cost of what the resolution by the court would be, but plaintiffs' attorneys' fees as well.
That would be very likely as well, yes.
So there is a risk to the city of Palm Springs if we do not reach a resolution.
Yes.
Thank you.
Are there other questions? Or do you want to go right to comments? You want to go to comments? No questions or comments on this part? Okay, well, I'm going to ask a question then. She mentioned, Councilmember Middleton mentioned the cost of litigation. I'm going to ask, do we have any idea how much staff time has been spent, maybe just this year alone, on this subject?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and to the council members. Obviously, all of these negotiations take quite a toll, not only on the plaintiffs and all the work they put into it, but as you heard me indicate earlier, all the city employees, the research, the technical assistance. You're going to hear some presentations here later on. Our staff has invested hundreds, if not thousands, of hours in long meetings, lots of research, cost of doing the research, hiring consultants, all of that. It'd be very difficult for me to just even come up with a number, but it would be very significant.
My guess is it's in the thousands of hours. I want to ask a question that came up earlier about the ARG report. Some people had ideas about giving additional input into that. Is that possible in the report?
I believe the authors of that report have indicated a willingness to provide some sort of peer review process, as is often done with these reports, yes.
Okay. It would seem to make sense if before it's memorialized to have any other updates from the community on factuals that they agree to as part of it, and if not, it could be an additional addendum in our public comment section. I want to ask about, we talked about at the memorial, the park. It's come up several times about a day of remembrance. What exactly does that be short of a holiday? I mean, is it just a day that we remember?
I think you can make it anything you want in terms of ranging from simply a day of remembrance with no associated benefits to a full-fledged city holiday that's recognized in other more legal forms. But it could simply be a day that the city recognizes as an important day for this historical situation.
Okay. I would support a day of remembrance, basically, because I think that's really how you continue memory of historic events. I know we're going on to the second part. Are we going to have any comments or questions on this part first? Okay, so let's start with Councilmember. Yeah, sure.
Thank you. I have additional questions to yours. And thank you for the survivors and the public here. We know you've been waiting a very long time, and now it's our job to do our due diligence and ask the questions that we always do. So please bear with us as we have a public conversation about this. Because this has been litigation, it has been in closed session because we had threat of litigation and we've been negotiating claims. And so this is an important meeting because it's the public's opportunity to hear and understand. And while you might be aware of, the negotiations and the claims and what's been offered back and forth, the public really isn't able to. So until now and our press releases. So please bear with us as we ask these questions for the public. That's our job, to do the people's business. So I appreciate the question of the mayor to include a peer review. I also would like to see that. I think that it's important as we make sure we have the best possible historical document. I love this, although it's a horrible history, I think it's so important that the city is investing the time and resources to tell the history and collect the history. So I'd like to see an opportunity for peer review. I know that we had done a call out for Palm Springs residents to include facts or historical documents or their stories. Would love to see that open up as well. I know we've talked about and heard from survivors about including their stories and their oral histories of their families in some of these conversations, or I know we've created some public records as we've had these meetings and heard from people in public testimonies. So if there is a way to hold that open and have it be peer reviewed and also have an opportunity for the public and survivors to include their stories, I would like to see that. And then I was going to just ask the city attorney, you spoke about this really briefly, but can you talk about the normal process? We got a comment that there wasn't a public hearing, there haven't been public hearings on this in a way that, Palm Springs is known to do. Sometimes we debate things for a very long time, too long. But could you tell us about the normal process for a settlement and what we're doing here and if this conforms to that process?
Sure. So our city, like most cities, when we receive a claim or other threat of litigation, the California's Brown Act allows for the city council to meet in executive or closed session to discuss with your attorney the strengths and weaknesses of the case, to give direction with regard to negotiating a potential resolution of that case. And that is exactly what this city council has done. Obviously, you've held more closed sessions on this than probably many other cases in recent history, but this is a much larger and significant claim and potential litigation than many others that the city has faced, at least in recent history. And so I would say, in my opinion, this process is very much similar to what our city, as well as any other city, would deal with in terms of how the city council and the city as an organization address these claims, yes.
Thank you. And then legally, the city council could just approve the settlement. But in fact, what we're doing is holding a public meeting, going over the information publicly, discussing and debating it in public instead of in closed session, and having this meeting, which is sort of, other than the formal action of accepting a settlement, optional for the council to do, right?
You're absolutely right. The California law allows public agencies and their governing boards to basically settle litigation in closed session. There are certain reporting out obligations, and the documents need to eventually be made public, but holding this type of a meeting to discuss and go over a potential settlement and vote on it in public session is unique and isn't done very often. I believe it's only been done once in my tenure here, and so it's unique.
Thank you. In my opinion, we're doing that because of how important this is, and it's an important moment in Palm Springs history and also important public conversation. So thank you for detailing that for the public. Mayor, those are the questions I had. I would like to say I also support doing a Remembrance Day for Section 14. So I assume if there's majority support, we can include that in this agreement and then leave the parties to decide the specific details like the date and all the rest, correct? Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions on this? Do you want to go to comments, Councilmember Garner? Did you? Yeah, I'm going to go in order.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. There are angels watching over us. That's very clear from your testimony. The Taylors, the Crawfords, the Metcalfs, the Hollands, the Roys, the Reyes, the Roberts, it goes on and on and on. The names in this room, the names of the people who we've lost. They were teachers, police officers, pastors, housekeepers, waiters, construction workers, carpenters, nurses, veterans, and most importantly, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, aunts, uncles, grandparents. Several of you said that you're from Palm Springs, of course, and how much you love your city. I'm from Palm Springs too. And it's a great honor for me to be here. Every time I talk about being from here and being up on this dais, I get emotional. But the love that you share for your city, I share too. And that's part of what calls me to support you. That's what calls me to do this work and to reach what I hope will be a resolution to the pain that you all have experienced. There's a book by Isabel Wilkerson called The Warmth of Other Suns, and it's about the Great Migration. And I've been thinking about that book a lot because of that title, The Warmth of Other Suns, and the people that fled areas in the South because of the discrimination they experienced there. And to know that so many came to Palm Springs, where the sun might be the brightest of all, is really moving and touching. And the fact that you still experience pain here is extremely upsetting. I'm very proud to support the recommendations here. And I really feel very grateful for all of you in bringing this to us, in working with us, and continuing to advocate every single day for years, and for some for generations. So thank you so much for being here, and I just want to say that I fully support what's in front of me, and I look forward to continuing to working with all of you.
Councilmember Middleton.
Thank you. I hope I'm being heard this time. Good. So I am going to be voting in favor of this resolution. And I want to take some time to explain why. And most particularly, I want to take this opportunity not only to explain why to the folks that are in this room, but the thousands of people across Palm Springs who are watching. And so many folks have come up to us over the course of the last 3 years to talk about their feelings, their concerns. And we have heard, I have, from many individuals who do not believe that a resolution of this type is an appropriate step. So I want to talk to those folks from this dais as to why I believe it is. So let's first begin with one of the documents that was incredibly persuasive to me. And that was when, through the research and work of a staff member, we obtained a copy of the 1950 census for Section 14. And at that time, there were 2,500 people living on Section 14. There were 7,660 people living in the entire city of Palm Springs at that time. 1/3 of the population was on Section 14. What we saw within the ARG report was that those individuals were largely the working class of Palm Springs. They were the carpenters, they were the janitors, they were the folks that kept the streets clean, and they were the folks who built houses and all of those other kinds of things. At that time, the population of Section 14 included 1,600 individuals who were identified by the census as white, 545 black residents, 257 white other, which was at that time largely used for Latinos, a small number of individuals that were Filipino, 117 Indians. When we get to 1965, after all of the efforts and evictions, there are 200 black families left. If 2,300 people can leave and 200 people who are left are black, You cannot tell me race did not play a significant role. That is the evidence sitting right in front of you, that there were limited options for Black families to go to. There were limited options for any number of people because, again, this was the working poor of the city of Palm Springs. So one of the other factors that is very fundamental for me, the land in question on Section 14 is the sacred land of the Agua Caliente people. It was not their idea to divide their land into square mile sections and cede half of it to the Southern Pacific Railroad. That was done by the federal government. So they had to live with the consequences of that and live with the fact that there were incredible restrictions put on them in terms of how they could use their land. And so it became the place where so many individuals who could not live anywhere else went to live. Ultimately, through an act of Congress, the Agua Caliente people gained control of their land. And at that time, they started making decisions as to what they wanted to do with their land. That created an enormous issue. 2,500 people living on land that needs to be vacated. 1/3 of the population. If we were to do that today in Palm Springs, it would mean that we would be trying to move out 15,000 people. City Council during that time had no responsibility greater than to work to try to provide other opportunities and places for people to be able to move to. And what you see in the ARG report is over and over again, City Council had opportunities to ease the burden that was being placed and did not take up those responsibilities. Now, I've heard from many, many people that somehow or another the Agua Caliente people have an obligation here. But it was not the Agua Caliente people that failed to act. It was the City Council of the City of Palm Springs at that time. And because of that failure, we have seen the kind of harm that was done to a population of people. And through your absolutely eloquent testimony, you have told us over and over again of the extent of hurt that went on, that has lasted into 3 generations, now approaching a 4th generation in many instances. That is compelling to me, and it argues for us to reach a resolution. We have reached a resolution that, as the city attorney outlined, is a responsible resolution based on homes that were partially or fully occupied at the time that they were destroyed. And they were destroyed by city employees. Now, there's any number of documentation that there may have been individual private actors who destroyed homes over time. There's a lot of history around the destruction of homes that had been vacated. But this is a resolution based on homes that were not yet abandoned at the time that they were destroyed, and personal property was destroyed by the City of Palm Springs. That is why it is the responsibility of the city of Palm Springs to compensate individuals for the destruction of personal property. And that is what we are doing here. There are many who would like us to do many other kinds of things, but we have done the most basic and simple. We broke something that was yours, and now we need to pay for it. So I will say that this has not been easy for any of us. But at the end of the day, what we will do with reaching this resolution is have an opportunity for this city to move forward, and for all of you who were harmed, for your parents, your grandparents, to know that the city did hear you, we did listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Holstage?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've learned not to follow Councilmember Middleton much. Usually we get to choose our order. For a reason, she's so eloquent, and I appreciate the parts of the report that you lifted up. And for your leadership, to you and the mayor and the mayor pro tem for commissioning this report. It's important. This is an important part of Palm Springs history and California's history. And I'm grateful that we have this report that shows what happened to residents. And we've heard you, and we appreciate it. And we know it's not easy for you to come here and talk about the traumatic history that you and your families had on Section 14. And not only do we hear you, as so eloquently said, we value you and your role in the city of Palm Springs. It's incredible to see the community here and what you've built through such adversity. So thank you for sharing your family stories. You know, the city can never begin to really compensate the harms that were done to you and your families. We do not have the budget to appropriately compensate the harm that was done, and for that, we apologize, but we hope that this resolution will be show that we value you and your place in Palm Springs and Palm Springs history, for building Palm Springs, for continuing to build Palm Springs, for your leadership in the community, and for decades of advocacy and community building, and that really matters. So I'm proud to support this. I was proud to issue the apology when I served as mayor of the city in 2021. I stand by my words that this was wrong then, and it's wrong now, and we need to compensate the harms. And I hope that this is just one step. When we issued the apology, we said words are not enough. It needs action. This is one set of action. You're seeing this settlement agreement. It will be followed by other action that we will take. And I hope that future city councils will continue to address the harms that were caused by Section 14, not just for the survivors, but for the descendants, for generations of descendants. So I just applaud your tenacity and for showing up here again and again. Thank you for bearing with us as we went through a long process. And I think I would be remiss not to give a shout out to Dieter Crawford, who's advocated. And Dieter personally, my husband grew up in Palm Springs. He went to Palm Springs High with Grace Garner, Councilmember Garner. But Dieter gave me a tour of Palm Springs, of North Palm Springs, and showed me the disparities and pointed to the data of the ongoing disparities by race that still exist in Palm Springs. And we have a lot of work to do to remedy what happened with Section 14 and the ongoing disparities that we face in our community. So I will proudly support this settlement. I look forward to the work ahead, and thank you to the council for all of the work getting here to a resolution, and thank you to the lawyers and the whole team. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Oops. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Like Lisa, I have a little bit to go through, so bear with me. I appreciate that we're in a position where we can discuss the settlement publicly. As my colleagues have said, we've had many discussions in closed session, and you have not been or had the opportunity to be a part of those conversations. I'm happy that this is a public vote and that we're not doing the vote in closed session and that you are excluded from that process. I'm grateful for the Section 14 survivors, the descendants, friends, and supporters who have all devoted an incredible amount of time and effort raising awareness of each of your lived experiences. Acknowledging the past wrongs and addressing the call of economic, physical, and emotional trauma endured by the residents of Section 14 has been my goal. Housing and economic development initiatives are not part of the proposed legal settlement and are subject to a separate vote by city officials. I feel bad for the former residents of Section 14 and their families for the misrepresentation made in the media and across the country that a $27 million agreement had been reached. Well, that's not accurate. In April, I supported an initial cash settlement offer of $4.3 million based on verified loss of property. At that time, it included a comprehensive package aimed at addressing historical injustices for the former residents of Section 14 and their descendants. The settlement was to be distributed directly to verified former residents of Section 14 and descendants. 2 days ago, the City of Palm Springs announced the original $4.3 million offer was increased to $5.9 million. Even though I remain concerned about the desired outcome of this settlement, my intent and desire was to see 100% of the money get into the hands of the survivors and descendants. For 2 years, the City Council and I have devoted careful consideration to how the settlement would contribute to a community healing process. Does the settlement truly address the underlying social justice issues that led to the loss of property and trauma? Does it address the heartfelt loss of community elders and the urgency to act before others pass on? I would have liked to have public meetings so we could educate the community outside of this room about the claims that have been brought forward to the City of Palm Springs, about the legal standing of those claims. How is value established for loss of tangible property 60 years ago? I'd like to have explained to the public, how do the statute of limitations come into play? How are implications to a settlement being addressed to include hundreds of Latino, white, and Asian families who are not members of the Palm Springs Section 14 survivors? Public perception and political ramifications of our actions today have generated or resulted in considerable public testimony about the loss of generational wealth, emotional and physical trauma, and it gives us an opportunity to share with the public, how are these funds, public funds, going to be used in the settlement? From a public perception standpoint, community should know there is no pressure to push this item through because we have 2 council members leaving. This item has been an issue of discussion for decades. Normally, we would have had the opportunities to publicly explain the procedural and administrative considerations of the claim. You know, what are the legal procedures for approving and implementing a potential settlement? What is the administrative burden of the settlement? How will the settlement impact future development plans for the Desert Highlands neighborhood? I appreciate the fact that we had the opportunity for City Council to walk through the settlement and the terms that are going to be included in the final agreement. I appreciate the historical context study. However, I am troubled by the fact that we released 116 that we commissioned as a city council to explore the historical context only 6 days ago, late last Friday night. It took us 60 years for records to be discovered, documenting the city involved abatements of 1965 through 1966. I'm concerned about not having public meetings to review this report. Additionally, since the Palm Springs Section 14 survivors weren't allowed to participate in the report, we don't have the primary documentation they could have provided to support their unique lived experiences. I'd like to explore the accuracy of some of the data points that are highlighted in the report. We are learning of factual errors that misrepresent Section 14's history. There are instances of misinformation, misunderstanding, and several falsehoods. We owe the Palm Springs Section 14 members and public the most accurate report that can be produced. With only 6 days of public review, we haven't had the time to hear support or disagreement with the facts in that report. I ask, what facts are we going to learn tomorrow that are missing today? I've been troubled with assessing the city's liability. This is complicated by the fact that the city had no authority to evict residents from tribal land. Evictions could only happen at the request of the Agua Caliente Indian Alatis, the individual landowner, court-appointed guardians, their conservators who were acting on their behalf. We know the city was involved, and we acknowledge the property loss at the hands of city employees. We need to remember, the city was not a lone wolf. I'm troubled with the absence of other entities involved in the loss of homes and personal property, evictions, and abatements. This includes the Agua Caliente Indian Alati landowners, court-appointed guardians, conservators acting on behalf of the Alatis, the Agua Caliente Tribal Council, Riverside County Sheriffs, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the federal government, the Superior Court, private citizens, and slumlords who illegally rented to tenants. There were many homes involved over decades, and uncertainty remains regarding the total number of homes the city directly abated. There may never be an agreement on what those total numbers are. I fully support today's proposed housing programs and the small business development opportunities. These are real commitments for the people of Palm Springs. I'm concerned, though, presenting them as bold initiatives tonight lessens their significance for the community at large. I'm hopeful significant benefits will inure to the former residents and families of Section 14, but I'm concerned if that will really happen. I fully support a day of remembrance. We are here to address the historical injustices and racism that existed in our community and create the pathways toward true healing. We're not here to set a precedent for how other cities can address historical injustices in their backyard. I've wanted all along to acknowledge and take care of those we have harmed. I continually ask myself when managing public funds, how does one put a meaningful dollar amount on the loss of tangible property, healing, and decades of trauma? There are 1,000 to 1,200 members of the claim. A $5.9 million offer puts that dollar amount around a $4,000 per member dollar level. City Council and city staff have spent significant amounts of time to get to this point. And I value everybody's time. I value our staff's time and the energy and effort that took to get us to this place. However, we have to remember, no one has endured the time and loss that Section 14 survivors and their dependents have experienced. Tonight, this settlement offer will pass. My heart is full in hearing members of the Palm Springs Section 14 survivors, hearing them express support of this settlement. I remain focused on the goal of acknowledging the past wrongs and addressing the call of economic, physical, and emotional trauma endured by the residents of Section 14. I have always felt this claim needed to become a lawsuit. I felt I have let the community down. The community I've advocated for, I've let down. I've helped raise awareness of the wrongs. I've helped lead the effort for the city to apologize for the city's role in the forced evictions of Section 14. I had hoped we would be in a position that our actions, we could put actions to the words and acknowledge the past wrongs by addressing the call of economic, physical, emotional trauma that has been endured by the residents of Section 14. I'm proud to support this settlement and the terms of the agreement, and I'm pleased we've gotten to this point. Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay. It's hard to follow all four of you, so I will keep my comments brief. I do want to address a couple things. You know, the data has been out there a long time. This report was excellent. I really also appreciated the story they tell of the Agua Caliente people, because they were oppressed for centuries, and they were exercising the right to their own land. And if you read the report, they tried to help. They tried to find affordable housing. They tried to build options. It was the city of Palm Springs that did not support that. They had affordable housing. They did not want to allow black people into the affordable housing. We know that even if there was evictions, that there were some homes and personal property destroyed before the eviction notices were done, some homes not evicted, and people, no matter what these homes were, they had something in them that was theirs and personal, and that is what this compensation is for. And this is an incredibly complicated and difficult history, and I said in April when I read out after we came to the agreement then that we wanted to right the wrongs of the past, and the truth is that we can't right the wrongs in the past. There is no way to do that. You know, what we can do is we can heal and move forward, and we can look at restorative justice. There is no amount of money that can make up for the loss. But when Councilmember Middleton said thousands of people are watching, the truth is that the world is watching. They're watching a city who is trying to heal and trying to come together and trying to move forward as one. And I've appreciated hearing all of your stories. I think the second part of tonight, when we talk about housing and economic development, are monumental in sort of in doing now what wasn't done in the past. And that is the real healing and restorative justice and resolution of this issue. And I know it doesn't always benefit the people who are harmed, but there should be the angels above and the people here should understand what this can do for the residents, for poor people, for other people of need who without this would not have these opportunities. And that is really thanks to your voices and your speaking up. And in many ways, you know, you cannot fix things that happened in the past, but what you do going forward is as or more important. And I thank you for all of doing that. I am strongly in support of this. I appreciate the community. And I do appreciate how much staff time has been into this, but more importantly, I appreciate your commitment into making sure your voices were heard, and they were. So thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to support the staff recommendation.
And just for clarification, that would also include the Day of Remembrance.
Yes, please.
And also the Day of Remembrance and an update to the ARG report.
Peer review process, yes.
Peer review process.
Peer review process with opportunity for residents or others to provide information. Is that possible? That's what the peer review means.
I believe so, yes. We'll follow up with the City Council in terms of the details from ARG.
Thank you.
Vote.
I don't have it on my screen.
You voted. Motion passes 5-0.
Motion passes 5-0.